Hey Airbnb family. So plenty of you want to know all about my trip to Europe and the properties that I stayed at. So this video, we're actually going to title The Good, Bad, and Ugly of Traveling on Airbnb Internationally. Let's get to it. Alright, so the reason why I named this video The Good, Bad, and Ugly of Traveling Internationally on Airbnb is because there were actually some bad and ugly things as well as some very good things. And I know most of you watching this are probably hosts, so you're going to take this opportunity to learn how to be a better host by watching this video. And we're going to give you some ideas you can incorporate, and I'm going to tell you a couple horror stories. And the reason why I'm going to tell you these is so that way you can better understand what it is that guests may have experienced in the past or might be going through, so that way you can better anticipate how they will respond to you as a host, and you can better understand Airbnb's brand as a whole. So, fun fact, I want to do a screenshot for you here, or a screencast for you here, but Airbnb's desktop version doesn't actually give you your past trips unless you have a trip upcoming. It actually locks you out of the trip section. So if you ever want to look at your past trips on Airbnb, you actually have to do it on your cell phone, and you can go through your timeline here. So what I did is I exported this in an email, and I opened up all 4 listings in some tabs here. So let's get into the screencast. Let me tell you all about our trip through Europe. So, visit number 1 was just 2 nights in Istanbul. So this one, the Ottoman building with modern flats. The good about this is they had a 24-hour concierge, somebody at the front desk. So imagine a hotel, like a very small one, where somebody's at the bottom of the stairwell with a desk, checking people in and out, giving you like electronic room keys, and then you walk up the stairs to whatever your room is. So they maybe had a total of 8 units in this building, and this of course is the one that we took. So the great thing was the people downstairs at the front were very helpful. They helped us book reservations for restaurants and stuff in Turkish because we don't speak it. So the one thing about this though is it says 3 beds, as you'll notice in the bottom. It says 1 bedroom, 3 beds, and of course there aren't actually 3 beds here. So they should have put it that it's 1 bed and then 2 couches, but they still did it in a way that was a little bit misleading. So when we showed up, my buddy Sean and I took the couch just because it wasn't quite my birthday yet and I wasn't going to be a brat. So this one was in an area called Sicily. You'll see that S-I-S-L-I. That's kind of like northwestern part of Turkey. It was really good. It's not far from a lot of the things you want to go see, like Taksim Square. We were just south of that, and we were able to go and take a look there and have some fun. So Taksim Square was a little bit dirty, a lot of tourist traps, but what can you expect? So in and out, the only thing these people really did wrong is that they kind of misrepresented the property as far as how many beds there really were. The internet also didn't work half the time, and when you're traveling and you have Wi-Fi and you don't want to have an international plan, Wi-Fi is something that you really need to communicate with people back home. So that's really it. So moving on. Our next Airbnb stay was in Prague. This is the Charles Square apartment. They overall did a very good job with this space. They didn't really build it out too much, nothing fancy. The beds were super basic. There wasn't anything else in the rooms. Pretty much the rooms were only big enough to have these beds. They took twin beds and kind of shoved them together. They were memory foam mattresses and made like a queen size out of them. And so they, there's things that they kind of had to make work, but they did a good job with it, and I have no complaints there. This one, you did have to go off-site to get keys. So this property is managed by Bohemian Estates, and they have like 70-ish properties in the Prague area. So they really lean on Airbnb hard, and other booking channels obviously. But you have to go a couple miles away, pick up the keys, and then come back. So there's not really a self-check-in for this one, but otherwise the place was good, and the price you see, about $124 a night, is correct. But what they did do is they do lower the rates last minute, kind of like how we tell you to do on this channel. When we went to extend our stay a couple nights, we got our next couple nights for really cheap because obviously it was like 24 hours in advance. So my tip for you on this is if you're going to lower your rates like the day of or for the next day, wait until after somebody's checkout time, right? Wait until like afternoon if the checkout time is noon, because somebody's going to make a decision on where they're staying before their checkout time, right? So the last thing you want to do is lower your rate like at, the night before when you could have just done it at noon the next day, and then have somebody like extend their reservation. They get that extra discounted rate. It might even go towards their percentage discount for like a week-long stay, and you're not collecting an extra cleaning fee, which really weighs down your average nightly rate, right? So timing your discounts here is something you can learn from this. Otherwise, there really was no bad or ugly here. It was just a generally nice basic stay, and it was definitely worth it for what we wanted. Managing our expectations, we were very happy. All right, so this one is this cute little island called Korčula, and this was after our stay in Split. We landed in Zagreb, drove through the countryside, ended up in Split, stayed in a hostel because I've never stayed in one, and Sean Ray, my buddy / real estate partner, decided that I had to stay in one. So I'll cover that in just a second too. But this little island of Korčula was our second choice. There's another island called Hvar, and we booked a Airbnb on that little island, but the host did not respond to questions about check-in instructions. They didn't have check-in instructions listed, but they were on Instant Book. So essentially, the day of arrival came and they didn't respond and give us check-in instructions. So we just booked a different Airbnb on a different island, and this island was super fun. Of course, I'm going to show you some B-roll here of that. And long story short, that first listing that we paid for, we got a full refund on, so the host isn't getting away with just baiting people, booking and not responding. So that worked out in our favor at the end. Now this one was actually really inexpensive. As you can see here, it's listed at $41 a night. And you know what? I think we maybe paid $55 is what we paid for. This was a bottom floor, like first floor of a house that was made into like a studio. They did a really cute job of it. And of course the island was super cute. So really what sold this property was the location on the island. They didn't have to do anything special, but they have 2 beds in the studio. They made it work. For our one-night stay, this probably was the easiest in and out that we had the whole trip. And so Maria here, yes, J's are pronounced with a Y, she was awesome. So thank you, Maria. Next, and our final Airbnb that we stayed at was this property in Serbia. Now this is the ugly one, bad and ugly. So you'll see that it's $40 per night, but that's per person. So if you travel with 2 people, and let me show you, let me go to 2 guests here and go to check-in. See, it's now $69 per person. So there's an extra fee per person that they do. So here's how this played out. I have a cousin in Serbia that I went and visited. We had a great time, hung out, spent a lot of time together. I've never met him before. So the last night before we left to the airport, we had to leave super, super early. So he took us to the river. There's a spot that that all the Serbs like to hang out on the river and just kind of kick it until the sun comes up, which was really fun. So we got to kind of do all these different things that people do. My birthday was actually the night before their version of Labor Day, which everybody stays up anyway till dawn and lights a bunch of fires. They go out into like the woods. It's a really outdoorsy holiday for them. So this is at that time. So we've got a couple people that we had over just kind of hanging out to send us off to the airport. And so Alexander's father, not Alexander here himself, but his father was the one managing the property. And he sent a message, said, hey, well, when will you be checking out? I'm like, we'll be gone probably about 7:15 a.m. And he's like, okay, I'll meet you at 7 a.m. So this guy arrives, and my cousin's still there, and a couple more people are still there. So there's more than 2 people in this apartment, right, or this house. And this house has got like 4 bedrooms, 10 total beds. It's designed to like handle large groups whenever applicable. So he says to us, you just violated our rules. You have to pay an extra 50 euros per person for every single night that they stayed, because that's the penalty, this 50 euro per person penalty for having more guests. So he wanted 4 nights, 50 euros per extra person. We're talking about 150 euros a night is what he wanted from us. And we told them that we will make a payment for whatever the penalties are on Airbnb, but we have to catch our flight, so just have Alexander send us a request for payment, and we'll talk about it with Alexander, and then make a payment for whatever we really are due to pay. And the father was like, no, that's not going to suit us. You're going to have to give us cash right now before you leave. And Airbnb has a policy, which is you never pay off of Airbnb. So we show them the policy, say, well, we cannot pay you off of Airbnb because it's part of the policy. And this is where it gets really weird. He tries to detain us. He tries to lock us inside of this house and keep us there so we would potentially miss our flight back to America in order to extort cash from us. So we actually had to physically move him in order to leave the apartment, and he pushes me, and I actually suffered a wound on my head, and it was a big dramatic mess, but we escaped from this Airbnb in Serbia, and of course we filed a report right away, let Airbnb know what was going on, and they gave us a partial reservation. They gave us a partial refund of like $30 for the last day. So the only thing that I'm really upset about is that Airbnb doesn't have the systems in place to really handle this level of problem, because obviously this listing is still up, and they're going to stay up because we're not Serbian locals. We didn't have time to go file a police report and make a big deal out of it. So be careful. I was warned by friends that in Serbia, everybody's really trying to get your money, and that is definitely the truth. So Alexander's father tried to pull a fast one and get some cash off Airbnb, and we made it out okay overall, but that was definitely the ugly of our trip. Now, this was the same unit, though, that had that menu that I mentioned that has these little extras if you want to, they have little things of vodka or extra foods or fruits or cereal, and they have this all ready to go, and if you want to use any of them, you'll pay a certain amount of what they call dinar in Serbian. So you just pay your fee, and you can have whatever it is in the unit. So this design, here's what's interesting, is everything that they have is like parceled out. Each person costs a certain amount of money. You want to use anything beyond the basics, it's a certain little amount of money. And so they're optimizing their listing by scooping large groups at a premium they think they can get, and then if they can't get a big group, the way that this has worked is they're still able to get like a group of 2 or 3 to stay because they didn't overprice it. Now, I've never done a dedicated like incremental pricing system like this, but it's worth talking about because, as you guys know, the way that I do it is we set like this fixed price in the future that's pretty high for single nights and then a discount for multi-night stays, and then from there, as it gets closer and closer to the day of, we lower our prices to accommodate smaller groups, but only last minute. So with this, you might get a traveler 2 months in advance that's going to stay for a week and a half that's only 2 people, right? And that would ruin your ability to get like a 10-person reservation, which is where to get all their money. So I'm a little partial to our system because, of course, you're advertising the premium further out, and that way you're much more likely to get like a high-paying stay. And then, of course, you're doing last-minute discounts to fill in the gaps. But I'm sure there's pros and cons to both. And that brings us to, of course, the hostels. We stayed at one hostel for a quick overnight in Serbia. That hostel actually gave us the night for free because we had reserved it, but it ended up on the wrong day. So they're like, hey, we don't actually have a spot for you, but you can stay at the hostel for free, just hang out in the living room. There's one extra room for staff in the back you can take a nap in. And because our flight was like in 6 hours when we arrived, so we just hung out for free in the living room. They gave us a refund, and that was really nice of them. So, of course, how hostels work is there's this common space. Everybody shares a living room. There could be, of course, up to 40 people who stay in a hostel because there's these dorm rooms that have 6 or 8 beds, and everybody reserves 1 bed out of the 8, and that's the shared space style. Otherwise, you can take a whole room with a couple beds and reserve that. So in Split, we did the private room thing where we wanted to reserve our own room, which we did, and it was great. And the only problem is that it was super loud. It was definitely a party hostel, so we had to deal with that. So everything was bare bones, though. The pillows were terrible, the mattresses were very thin, but the rate was really low. So I guess you get what you pay for with these hostels, but you basically got great location, a place to shower, a place to put your head, and you get to hang out with a bunch of other travelers at a very, very low price. So that's how the hostels went. Aside from that, if you want to know more about the hostel strategy, just watch our previous video that covers it. So the goods, the wonderful Maria in Korčula, thank you for making your home available last minute and just having everything just be simple and basic, easy in, easy out, no troubles. I'd say the bad would be Turkey's misrepresentation of the number of beds and, of course, the no Wi-Fi, stuff like that. And the ugly, in Serbia, you could get mugged by your host's father. So if you have any other questions about our trip to Serbia, Croatia, Prague, or Istanbul, feel free to leave them in the comments. Thanks for taking the time to watch this whole multi-testimonial here. And again, also thanks for watching Airbnb Automated. It's a pleasure to make these videos for you. So I will see you on the other side.